Hey crafty friends, thank you very much for joining me. This is Einat Kessler with Saturday Extravaganza, and today I'm creating a junk journal. This is my pile of paper scraps. It's a really big pile, so I want to reduce it by taking a few of the papers and creating a junk journal. So I'm taking out some pieces of cardstock and pattern papers, and they can be double-sided, they can be one-sided, doesn't matter. And what I'm going to do next is, now that I have this pile, is cut it to size. So my junk journal is going to be 5.5 by 8. So for the inner pages, I would need them to be at a size of 8 by 11. So this is the maximum size. They can be smaller, and I recommend you to have different sizes of pages. So 11 by 8 is the maximum size. So once I have the size that I need of the paper, I'm going to find the middle, which in this case is 5.5 inches. And I'm just going to score it and fold it in half. And I'm going to repeat this process with all the pages that I'm going to include in my junk journal. Now for this paper, for example, it is not straight, so I'm going to leave that side torn. And again, find the middle point, fold it in half, and I have another page. They can be smaller, for example this one doesn't have to be, like I said, doesn't have to be 5 inches, 5.5 by 8. After you fold it, it can be smaller, but it can't be larger because then it will pop out of your cover. So I'm going to go ahead and go through the entire pile and just make sure that they are all cut to size and folded in half. If you need to straighten your edges, look at this one. This is really small. Some are narrow, like this one. If they're small enough that I can just fold them, this is not straight. I'm just folding them in half without even measuring. Unless it's quite a big paper and I need the help of my trimmer, so I'm scoring it like this. So once you have your pattern papers, I like to add some plain white A4 papers, which of course I need to cut them down a little bit so they would fit the size. So again, preparing a pile of 11 by 8 white papers and folding them in half. And I'm going to mix them together with the pattern papers and cardstocks. So now I have all my papers ready, and I'm going to start assembling my signatures. A signature is a section of the book that is going to be sewn to the cover. So basically 4 to 5 papers in a signature, maybe even 6, depending on how thick they are, will be good. So I'm just mixing the white papers with the pattern papers and creating my signatures. You just put the papers one inside the other like this and fold. So I'm going to have, I think, 4 signatures for this junk journal for the measurements that I'm using. This is going to be quite thick, but that's okay. So here are my 4 signatures, and I'm just going to prepare the cover. Now as you can see, the edges are not exactly, before the cover, the edges are not exactly the same length, because once you create your signatures and you're putting one paper inside the other. Some of them stick out later. So what I want to do now is just cut the edges of all the papers at once. So I'm just going to measure 5.5 on the top paper, hold the stack of papers and signatures firmly, and just cut with my craft knife, just making sure, cutting them without moving the stack through the entire stack. And now the entire stack is going to be the same size. Now before, you saw me measure the height of the stack, which is about 1 inch, and I did that so I would know how to create the cover. So see, now my stack is nice and organized and even. So now I have two 12 by 12 papers, which I'm going to cut to 8 by 12 inches. The cover is always larger than the pages. So now I'm going to take 5.5 inches from the right and score, and 5.5 inches from the left and score, and that would give me a spine of 1 inch in the middle to insert all the papers inside, like so. And you can see the triangle of the cover that I need. This will give us room to grow, because once you start adding stuff to your journal, it becomes kind of fat, kind of bulky. So again, 5.5 inches from one side and score, and 5.5 inches from the other side and score, and that will leave you exactly with 1 inch spine in the center, in the middle. And I'm using 2 cardstock because I need a soft cover, but I still need it to be durable enough to carry this weight of all the papers. You can't use chipboard because you need to sew in it. Sewing into chipboard is virtually impossible. I'm just gonna take a tiny little, maybe less than 1/16 of an inch from the sides, because once you fold it, this is going to be the inner part of the cover. Once you fold it, it's gonna stick out a little bit. So I'm gonna, after inking all the edges, I'm going to use a little bit of Mod Podge to glue them together. So the Mod Podge with the 2 papers is going to create a sturdy yet soft cover for our journal. So just make sure to apply Mod Podge to all the corners, because you don't want anything to corners to lift up or anything like that. Make sure it's glued down together, and you need to let it dry. Okay, once that's dry, you take your linen thread and a needle, and you cut about, I think 15 inches of thread is enough. And we can start measuring the pages for sewing. Now, you take the first page of your signature and you put it on, I use like a computer mouse mat. It needs to be a sponge because you need to poke the papers and create holes. It's much harder on a hard surface. So you need to find your center point, which is 4 inches, and then you take your needle and you stick your paper and create a hole. And then you go 1.5 inches to the left and 1.5 inches to the left again, which means 1, 2.5, and 4, 5.5, and 7. You need 5 holes for this size of a journal. Okay, 1, 2.5, 4, 5.5, and 7. And this one page is going to be your template to create the holes in all the other papers and signatures. So now you take your paper and use it as a template to create the holes in the first signature. And once you place that on the mat, on the foam, it becomes really easy to create the holes. So you do that with all 4 signatures. You use the same page as a template because you need all of them to be exactly the same. So you take that page, put the signature aside, take signature number 2, and create the holes. You take your needle and you poke. And it's really relatively easy because you don't have too many papers. So you won't have a problem creating the holes. If you have a piercer, you can do that with as well. Now after all your 4 signatures are pierced, you go ahead and need to do the same thing on your cover. Now on your cover you need to make 4 sets of holes for the 4 signatures, and they need to be evenly spaced. So what I'm doing is I'm taking my ruler. Remember, you have 1 inch, so I'm measuring 1/8 of an inch from the left side and marking it with my pencil, and then 1/8 of an inch from the other side, marking it with my pencil, and then I'm measuring 1/4 of an inch from each of those little marks that I made. Again, on another side, 1/8 of an inch, 1/8 of an inch, and then 1/4 and 1/4. And now I can draw the lines that will tell me where I will create my holes. So I will have 4 lines, evenly spaced from the edge of the cover and also from each other. So now I have the 4 lines, and I can go ahead and measure again where I need to put my holes. So I'm aligning my ruler with the first line, finding the middle point, which is 4 inches, creating a hole, and then 1.5 inches to the side, which is 2.5, and another 1.5 inches, which is 1. The same measurements: 1, 2.5, 4, 5.5, and 7. And I'm doing this, I'm repeating this. I just want to show you how it looks. Hope you can see those little dots, white dots. These are the holes. So I'm going to repeat this for each line. Again, finding the middle point at 4, creating a hole, 2.5, and 1, and on the other side on 5.5 and 7. Again, on the 3rd line, creating my holes, and once you have all that done, we can start sewing. We're gonna sew in 8 shapes. Might be a little confusing, but I'm gonna take you through it, and you see how easy that is. We're gonna create 2 8s. So here are all the holes in the spine. You see how that looks? We have 4 lines of holes. So now, again, I said 15 inches is quite enough to take. You have to thread your needle, and we're going to take the first signature and start sewing. So we're going to take the first signature, just making sure that the cover is in the right direction, and we're going to go in from the inside to the middle hole. We're going to insert the needle through all the papers, the middle hole from the inside. Going to go through the entire signature. Sometimes you're lucky you can do this with all the signature at once, but sometimes you need to go paper by paper. And then we're going to find the first line, the middle hole, and go through the cover, the spine. Make sure you always sew on the same line because this is the first line for the first signature. Now we are going to go to the right or to the left, it doesn't matter, to the second hole, to the next hole. So from the outside into the inside, again through all the pages of the signature. Have to find the holes that we made. Sometimes that's kind of a difficult because the holes are very small. So if you need to use your glasses to find them like I do, then do that. Sometimes I just like to tight the line and go on. Okay, so now we're back into the middle. We're going to go to the top hole from the inside to the outside. Again through all the pages with the needle. Where is the hole? Found it. Just sometimes you need to tug a little bit, and now you need to find that hole in the cover. Remember to stay on the same line, don't get confused. Same line, and there it is. Okay, now you need to leave a tail, don't pull on the thread. Now we are going to go back to this hole again. Remember, we're creating an 8. So through the entire signature, through all the pages, and now we are going to go back into the middle hole. This is into the middle hole again, and this is going to complete our first 8. Basically created an 8 with our thread. So we're gonna go through all the pages again. Going from the inside toward the outside. All the pages. Where is that needle? Just gonna take it out and continue. Going through the rest of the pages, and then towards the cover. So now we did the top part. We're gonna go to the other side now, creating the second 8. So we're going to go from the outside towards the inside to the next hole, through all the pages of the signature, sometimes they don't align properly, so you need to do it page by page, but that's okay. So through all the pages, coming out in the center and going to the next hole, which is that bottom hole from the inside towards the outside to the cover. So I'm doing it very slowly so you can follow along. Hope I'm not boring you. And through the cover on the same line as all the other holes. And now we're going to go back into that middle, to that second hole that we did before, to create our 8. And then we're going to go back on this side, the final step is to tie both of the threads together. We don't need to go back into the middle hole. Just going to show you in a sec. Go through all the pages. With your needle. So now you have two threads. See, one and the other. Now you need to make sure they're all tugged and very tight. So make sure all the threads are tight. You need it to be very tight so it will be sewn properly. So very gently pull on all the threads. Make sure they're tight. Pull them together, and then you have your two. See? You have your two edges that you need to tie together. Just create a double knot like this. 1 and 2. And then your first signature is sewn. If your edges, by the way, are too long, then just cut them. Your first signature is sewn. Isn't that cool? Now we can go ahead and do the second one. The second one is going to be sewn exactly like the first one on the second line. So we're going to go ahead and sew it the same way that we did for the first one. So we're going to go in through the middle hole all the way through all the pages and the middle hole of the second line on the cover. Taking it out, don't forget to leave the tail, and then we're going to go to the next hole through all the pages. Cover first, and then through all the pages, the next hole. So once you get the hang of it, it's easy because it's the same all the time. If you want to create a smaller journal, then you can only do 3 holes, but this one is kind of big, so I did 5 holes. So I'm going to make sure that it's sewn properly and the pages will hold. So now we're going to go to the top hole, through all the pages, and once we're done with that, we're gonna go through the cover on the top hole of the second line. Now we're going to go back to the hole that we did, just going to tighten that a little bit because they got a little tangled. Okay, so now back into this hole here, creating our 8 through the cover and then the signature. Remember to stay on the second line because it's the second signature. You don't want to accidentally sew on the wrong place. So through all the pages, and now we're going to go back into the middle, the center hole, and go to the other side through the cover, sometimes you need to go page by page because it's not very much aligned, So you need to find your individual holes in the signature. Okay, found them. Now through the spine of the cover, second line, don't forget middle hole. And now we're going to go to the other side. Create another 8 into this hole through all the pages of the signature. And then to the final hole on the side, go into the signature and through the spine of the cover. And now we need to go back into this hole and tie the 2 edges of the thread. Now I'm gonna do the next 2 signatures. I'm not gonna bore you. I'm gonna tie this, do the other 2 signatures, and then show you how it looks when it's completed. Just gonna tighten up everything and tie the 2 edges. Make sure they're tight. Sorry, it's out of the camera. Tie them, cut the edges. I'm gonna do the other 2 and come back. So you have 2 more to go. So this is how it looks when it's all finished. All 4 signatures are sewn into the cover. See? And look how pretty that is. You have your own junk journal. You used up your paper scraps, and you can doodle, art journal, write, draw, do whatever you want in this journal. And of course you can create many more. So this is really fun, and I had a lot of fun creating it. I hope you had too, and that you were inspired to create an junk journal yourself. It's very easy, right? It's not too complicated, and you can maximize your supplies and use some scraps of paper that you have. So I hope you were inspired to create one for yourself. Thank you very much for joining me. See you all next time.